are a grown-up adult, start acting like it. What are we talking about this week? We are talking about boundaries. Parent to child boundaries. Us being the child, them being the parents. How do we set boundaries, and how do we create those boundaries while we're still living with them? Last week we talked about having a healthy relationship with our partner, and this week we're talking about having a healthy relationship with our parents. I call my mom every single day, and my boyfriend, who is British, thinks that that's crazy, but all of my Latin girlfriends are the same. We are constantly in communication with our parents. I didn't move out of my mom's house until I was almost 22 and I had graduated college. And the reason why I moved out was because I went to travel for 3 months and she moved to Mexico. So I was basically forced to move out of the house. And for me, it was really difficult because I wasn't used to living on my own. Even then, it took me 7 months before I moved into my own apartment because I was living with a family friend for those 7 months. So I want to talk about how we can establish boundaries with our parents, but more importantly, what to do when you're still living with your parents. Living with your parents as an adult is different from living with your parents as a teenager. And in order for us to start becoming an adult, we need to make those changes. In Latin culture, it's very common for sons and daughters to live with their parents until they get in a serious relationship or married. And I realized that a lot of my friends are also moving back in with their parents post-graduation because they're not financially ready to live on their own. The problem with living with your parents as an adult is that sometimes they baby you so much that you can't actually grow. You can't become your own person. In my mom's eyes, I will always be her baby. But in order for me to transition into adulthood, I had to stop being a baby. I had to start making my own decisions and taking control of my own life. But that is the question. How do we make that transition? How do we have those conversations? And it's really difficult to transition into adulthood when we are still living with our parents. But I have found that the best thing I did was have that conversation with my mom. I actually had to tell her, hey mom, I know that you love me and that you're just trying to do what's best for me, but you have to let me make my own decisions. You have to let me make my own mistakes. And it wasn't until we had that conversation that she fully respected that. I think deep down a lot of parents know that in order for us to grow, they have to let us make our own decisions, but they won't necessarily allow us to do that until we say, hey, I need to do this for myself. So you need to have that conversation with your parent. And it doesn't have to be aggressive. You don't have to be, hey, I'm my own person now, leave me alone. But you do have to establish what is off limits. What is it that you are trying to do for yourself? I think a lot of us are so afraid of letting our parents down that we don't do the things that we want to do for ourselves. It is 100% okay to want things for yourself that your parents don't want for you, whether that be a relationship or a job or where you live. I don't know what other parents are like, but I know I had a helicopter Latin mom, and it wasn't until I asked her to stop helicoptering that she was able to start giving me that healthy distance to start making my own mistakes and making my own decisions. For me, setting boundaries meant telling my mom, sometimes I won't be able to make Christmas in Mexico, and that's okay. You need to do what is best for you. That being said, these people did give you life, so you have to be willing to meet them halfway. Have that conversation, discuss what works for you and what works for them, and come together to some sort of joint decision. I think the hardest part of becoming an adult is becoming financially independent. And fortunately, I didn't really have to work 5 jobs through college to make it out. And I have so much respect for people who did, but I just worked my one job, and between my mom and I was able to graduate without any student debt. So I knew that my mom was always there as a financial crutch. And it wasn't until I started paying for things on my own that I did start becoming an adult, because I realized I have to make my own money. My mom is not there to support me my entire life. And it's not your parents' jobs to support you throughout your entire life. Until you start making your own money, you won't know what adulthood feels like. Like I said previously, I lived with my mom up until I was 21, almost 22. So I want to talk about how to set those boundaries and step into adulthood even when you're still living at home. There's nothing wrong with living at home after 18. I know in the US, there's this big push that as soon as you turn 18, you move out of your parents' house. But that's not necessarily as accessible to all of us. Or maybe we don't feel comfortable emotionally leaving home yet, and that's okay. And while you're living in your parents' house, maybe your parents are very much the kind of people who are my house, my rules. But there are certain rules that you need to set as well in order to make sure that you are still moving forward into adulthood and growing. Rule number 1, generate your own income. Until you start making your own money, you are not an adult. Age is not correlated to being an adult. Being an adult means that you are self-sufficient and responsible for yourself, as well as all of the costs that comes with being yourself. If your parents are still financing your entire existence, I don't care how old you are not an adult. You are a dependent. And there's nothing wrong with your parents helping pay your way through school or being a financial crutch as you are landing on your feet. But understand that the longer you depend on your parents for money, the harder it will be for you to actually mature into adulthood. So if you want to be an adult, get a job. Rule number 2, contribute to rent. You can't contribute to rent until you get a job. That is why rule number 1 is so important. However, once you have gotten a job, even if your parents have offered to let you stay at home to save money or to live for free, you should still be willing to contribute to rent. I lived with my mom until I was 21, almost 22, but I was always pitching in towards rent as soon as I got a job because I wanted to symbolize that change in our relationship dynamic. It doesn't have to be 50-50 rent, but you should be willing to pitch in something. And if your parents refuse to take any of your money, that's awesome. It's so great that your parents are so supportive, but you should make it a rule of thumb that every month you take X amount of money and you put it into a savings fund. It's as if you were paying rent just so you can get used to what it will be like to pay rent, but you're also setting up an emergency fund. Also, it's good to buy things for the house like detergent, soap, toilet paper, all of those little things. Get into the habit of buying them. Make sure that you are not freeloading, but you do have to take control of changing that dynamic by financially contributing to the household. And rule number 3, drum roll, do your own laundry. So this to me is shocking, but the amount of friends I have who never did their own laundry until they left their house is really high. I cannot believe there are people who live with their parents and let their parents do their laundry. No ma'am, no sir, we are not doing that anymore. We are doing our own laundry, we are washing our own dishes, we are cleaning our own bathrooms. Get into the habit of taking control of cleaning up after yourself. If you want to live with your parents post-graduation or while you get on your feet, that's fine. But you cannot keep letting your parents clean up after you. You need to start getting into the habit of doing your own housework because as soon as you move out on your own, no one is going to do your housework for you. So learn how to do your laundry. It's okay to still want to live at home. It's okay to be living at home, but it's not okay to live at home and expect your parents to keep treating you like a child. This was something I really had to work on, and this is why I thought it was important to do an episode on this. You are the only one who can take yourself from being a child, from being a teenager, to becoming an adult. It is no one else's responsibility to make you transition into adulthood. You have to take charge and make those changes. Have those conversations, set those boundaries, let your parents know what you will tolerate and what you won't tolerate. Don't be aggressive about it, but do be firm. You have to be able to say, hey mom, my weight, it's off limits. Or, hey mom, I appreciate everything you've done for me, but let me make my own decisions. Your relationship will change with time, but you have to be the one pushing it forward. Like always, I love hearing your feedback. Have you made the transition from being a child into being an adult and your relationship changed with your parents? Drop a comment, tell me what you think. Or tell me if you think that your parents aren't ready for you to make that change, or you're not ready to make that change. Why aren't you ready yet? I want to hear back from you guys. Next week, we are talking about relationships with your significant other's child. Kind of step parenting, but not quite step parenting. This is something that I am going through right now. My boyfriend has a daughter and I have come into her life. So I wanted to explore that dynamic because I do think we are at the age where some of us are dating people with children and we're not sure how that relationship works. We're not sure how to step into that little human's life. So let's explore it. Next week, stay tuned. Looking forward to having another conversation with you guys. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. We are almost at 150 subscribers, which was my goal for February. Thank you always for watching and for contributing. I appreciate you guys. Follow me on Instagram at Sophia Eats Pizza or head over to the blog to read a little bit more about what I have for you guys. Thank you. See you next week.